Hi, lady. You're either pregnant or very fat.
I am pregnant.
How would you like your child to start a rocket company?
That would be great. I guess.
Then try new Tylenol, Autism Strength, the only pain reliever guaranteed to put your child on the spectrum. This fast-acting Tylenol quickly goes through your bloodstream and somehow, through some unknown process no one can quite explain, gives your child autism.
Are there any side effects?
Well, there's the autism.
Oh.
Tylenol Autism Strength. It may or may not give your kid autism. There's like a correlation or something.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I'm not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
Check him out. He was chomping on that plant. I was hoping, I didn't want to bother him. We're not getting too close to him. See if I can get it. I wish he would eat again. It was wild watching him chew on that thing. He's noticed I'm here. He doesn't want to move. All right. Oh, there he goes. Whoop.
And Charlie understood the great paradox that it's only by surrender to God that God's power can flow into our lives and make us effective human beings. Christ died at 33 years old, but he changed the trajectory of history. Charlie died at 31 years old, but because he had surrendered, he also now has changed the trajectory of history.
Yeah, I suppose that all of us that are in Christ potentially may serve him in such a manner.
Sorry, I cut it off. You chomped again. There he goes. Well, at least we're getting him moving. That's a big turtle, isn't it? Wow. All right, if anybody watching this video knows how to repair one of these laminate floors, please leave a comment in the video. That was, I dropped the UPS battery as I was taking it apart because I was going to recycle the battery and it slipped out of my hand and gashed the floor. All right, so many times you've heard me talk about the new video studio. And I've been working, you can see the dog right here. There's the new server. And there's one old server, and there's another old server. And these have all been reloaded, new disk drives. This one's running Linux Mint 22. And this is running Windows Home Edition. And this is going to be running Windows Pro, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I did want to show you something that you might want to do. These computers are in standby, even when you cut them off. So they use electricity. And so what you might want to do, you can't see it. There it is over there. That's a power strip. And you can put it on it sends off a signal, and that'll kill the power to everything. So, but you can, when I flip that switch, I don't know if you heard the click, but now all the devices in here have power. And see the monitors powering up? So, and also these are vampire devices. They sit on standby. So if you don't have a power strip with a toggle that you can cut the power, your office is sitting there when everything's off consuming electricity. Now, we're going to get into more of the story This is the laptop I've been using to do the videos with. This is the MSI Creator, but it's on its last leg. I don't know, something's gone wrong with it. I'm going to reload Windows 11 Pro on there and see if that'll solve the problem. This is a new power cord. But let's, I'm going to show you this bad boy. Let's power it up. Like got the fans lit up down there. It's pretty cool. So unfortunately, the shop that I took this to, because I couldn't finish it, I was having trouble. There was a kid there. He builds computers for a living. Sometimes a man's got to know his limitations. So I just took this over and let them finish it up for me. It was $350, but he hooked everything up. You can see all the front USB ports. I was a bit worried that he might not make the connections on those. He mounted those fans down there. So you got to give credit where credit's due. But let's watch how fast this thing boots. Now, you know I just cut the power, so here we got the monitors coming online. Boom, 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 and boom. So I got 4 monitors. This is going to be badass. So, like I said, he put Windows 11 Home on here. That's more than adequate for most people, okay? I would run Windows 11 Home. I like Linux better, but unfortunately, there's a lot of things on that you can do on Windows that you can't do on Linux. Well, not a lot, just a few. I mean, I can even run DaVinci Resolve now on Linux. Anyway, we'll get into the Windows 11 setup. Let's talk about why I bought Pro. Okay, Pro has Hyper-V support, and the Home Edition does not. And see, I want to be able to run virtualization through VirtualBox on these computers so that I can have Linux operating systems on this server, because I've got, I guess, about 16 terabytes of disk storage in there or more, and with M2 drives for the operating system, which is something you're going to want to think about. And I did want to talk about licensing for just a second, because I was looking at, if you buy it from Microsoft, you're looking for the Pro version, you're looking at $199 for a license. Okay, and that's a retail license. What's the difference between an OEM license and a retail license? Well, let's get the dog on the video one more time. An OEM license means that once I install an OEM license on this computer, it's attached to this hardware. I can't use that license on any other computer with another motherboard, all right? So now with a retail license, I can move that retail license to another computer. However, you still only get one license. So you can go up to these websites, you can buy an OEM license for, well, I don't know, I saw it anywhere from $5 to $20. I did go to one of the questionable sites, and they, for whatever reason, they couldn't accept my credit card. I don't know whether Visa had them blacklisted or what. Finally, I went to Amazon, and there was a company, I want to say it was Comp Geeks LLC, and they were offering a USB drive with a license on it, and Windows for the install. And I said, well, at least I'm getting a USB drive. It was $50. Now, and the thing I like about buying it from Amazon is that, you know, they got good return policies. But anyway, I just wanted to show you the home setup here. This will be the new video studio. And by the way, I'm looking at, I got a new keyboard on order. No, this isn't my primary keyboard. That's just one I had that I used many years ago, but I had to use it with this. So we'll talk about the new keyboard when it arrives. We got to get the license and get the Windows 11 installed on here, and then get it, you know, and I've already got all the hard drives formatted with the data on them, but maybe when I reinstall, I may end up having to redo that work. But we're in the home stretch, baby. Let's get it done. Let's get on the video. So believe it or not, I've been working on this video for about 5 days, which is utterly ridiculous. But, you know, the news comes fast, and, you know, I'm trying to get the new video studio up, and you've seen the clips on what we're doing with that. But the greatest development ever was this right here. And we'll talk about this. Google admits censorship under Biden. Promises to end bans of YouTube accounts of thousands of Americans censored for political speech. Now, I'm still shadow banned on YouTube, or ScrewTube as I like to call it. But that's okay, but it sounds like we've won a huge victory here for free speech. And so this whole video is kind of about exploring free speech. But this was so important, I felt like I had to add this to the video. Boy, I tell you, it's been brutal because I've been doing a lot of research. It says, today, thanks to the oversight of Chairman Jim Jordan, Google commits to, and by the way, if you didn't understand, Google is a CIA creation. They are an instrument of the U.S. government, even under the Trump administration. So, but, they're supposedly still a corporation, even though it's a fascist relationship between Google and the government. But at the same time, I thought this was great. Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off of YouTube due to political speech violations on topics such as COVID-19 and elections an opportunity to return to the platform. Now, are they going to compensate them for all of the money that they lost? Some of these people had millions of followers. You have to understand what it takes to build the YouTube channel. Now, I do this just for a hobby, so I don't make any money. A lot of these people put a lot of their work into creating a YouTube platform so that they could make money. And then their livelihood depended on it. And Google it was just kind of like when they took Parler down back in 2020. I had 56,000 followers on Parler. Boom, just nuked right off the board. But let's get this out of the way real quick. The Biden administration pressured Google to censor Americans and remove content that did not violate YouTube policies. No shit. The Biden administration's censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. You think? Public debate should never come at the expense of relying authorities. Wow. The company will never use third-party fact checkers. Wow. And well, actually, YouTube says they're going to do what X is doing with basically community censorship of what. And by the way, it works really good on X. A lot of people complain that, yeah, there are people that go up and they use the community posts, the community stuff. Most of the time, people call people out pretty damn good from what I'm seeing on X. So, I know a lot of you just watch the mainstream media, especially if you're over 60 years old. Anybody over 60 doesn't even know what's going on in the freaking world. The company will never, Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech, including the removal of lawful content. Now, on that note, I don't know if you watched Trump at the UN. I tell you, man, he's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I couldn't believe it. He called out Europe. He called out the UN. Everything he said was a beautiful statement for the country. And yet, he continues to send bombs to Israel to exterminate the Palestinians. I don't even know where this guy comes from. One day he's, and then of course, then he came out with some crazy statement like, we're going to bomb Russia. A nuclear superpower. We're going to, he's threatening Putin with, we're going to go in and NATO's going to take you on. I don't know, man. I'm telling you, it's a crazy, crazy world. I want to see if there's anything else I want to bring to your attention. So, and by the way, I got my video up on Pam Bondi, as I like to call her, because she hadn't done shit. And, Trump put up a post which didn't call her out specifically, but it said that, look, we need to get moving along with, get somebody somewhere under indictment, or prosecute somebody, and she hadn't done shit. She's a deep state operative, and I've been telling everybody that. But so this is a great post by this guy, Jake Can 72. He says, we're 245 days into the golden age of Trump's return and still no deep state arrest. Funny thing is, we've already mapped the statutes for you. It turns out we have tools too. Adam Schiff, mortgage loan fraud, 18 USC SS 1014, 1344, 1343, 1341, false statements, 18 USC S 1001. Obviously, this guy's a lawyer. Elon Omar, and I won't go through all the statutes he's listed. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, record destruction, January 6th, 18 USC S 1512, 1519. Gavin Newsom, theft of federal funds, 18 USC S. So he's quoting all of the statutes and everything that Pam Bondi, or Pam Blondie, I like to call her, can use to prosecute these people. Letitia James and Fannie Williams, mortgage fraud, civil rights conspiracy, 18 USC, SS 241, 242, 1341, 1343. Ergeron, Kaplan, Merchant, judicial misconduct, deprivation of rights, 18 USC, SS 201, 1346, 241, 242. James Comey, threats, destruction of evidence, classified materials, 18 USC, SS 845, see, 1519, 793. George Soros, RICO, corruption, bribery, 18 USC. And it just, so tell us, why are the regular citizens able to connect the dots with a laptop while people with badges and gavels and power pretend the picture isn't clear? Good damn question, Pam Bondi. When the bad cuss word here, when the fuck are you going to do something? Peace out. Let's continue with the video. Watching the world burn, watching the world burn. September 2025. Let's get into it. Let's get on some other topics. I'm not going to talk about the Charlie Kirk story. You can go to any YouTube channel. They're all speculating. Until the autopsy is performed and there's either a bullet in Charlie Kirk or there's not a bullet in Charlie Kirk, I'm just going to not weigh in on that whole situation. Too many wags out there. Too many people profiting off of crazy stories. So let's get a good story. North Carolina has Harmeet Dillon. She has removed 100,000 illegal voters from the voting rolls in North Carolina. So you can see that, you know, even in a purple state like North Carolina, it's good that we're making progress on cleaning up the voter rolls. As I've told you many times in the past, the only way that really we can do that is to purge the voting databases and re-register everybody, who's not an illegal alien. And also that'll get all the dead people out of the voting rolls and everything else, rather than going vote by vote. That would be by far the easiest way. Of course, the Democrats will say that if you're a black person, you're not smart enough to be able to get an ID. That argument is the most prejudiced argument I've ever heard in my life, but I guess that's what the Democrats believe. I don't know. Whew. I gotta take a break. I'm pushing the dog in some deep grass. Well, hell, let me show you. Hold on. That's the grass I'm pushing the basket through. And I'm really struggling to get this done, because he won't walk on the way out. He'll walk on the way back, which will make life easier going back. All right, so that was some good news. The other good news, because Trump bombed Qatar, the Middle East are forming alliances, mutual alliances to protect each other. So unbeknownst to many Americans, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia just signed a mutual defense pact where Pakistan will provide or give nuclear protection to Saudi Arabia from Israel. So Trump is uniting the whole Middle East. It's a great thing. You know, I mean, he's the uniter in chief for sure. So that's a hell of a development. I can't imagine. So if Israel bombs Saudi Arabia, they might just get nuked. I wonder if Qatar is going to be able to get a a nuclear arrangement with Pakistan next. And let's see, Iran was cozying up with somebody in the middle. Oh yeah, but there was a meeting and Iran signed a mutual defense pact. So Trump has really united the entire Middle East against the United States and Israel. Oh, Iran also tested an ICBM recently. So the only purpose for an ICBM is a nuclear weapon. And from what I understand, it's got a 2,000-mile range. So I do believe Iran's gearing up so that they can hit the United States with nuclear weapons. Just speculation. I have no evidence of that. I don't think Iran has a nuclear weapon at this time, but they do have the launch vehicle. And that's by far the most difficult thing for a country to accomplish. The nuclear weapons, that's kind of old technology. It's been around. So Trump has united the entire Middle East against the United States. It's a hell of an accomplishment. We got peace breaking out all over the world as the genocide in Gaza keeps going along. Still can't believe it. How y'all doing?
God bless America.
Yeah, God bless America for sure. So anyway, we got, let's see, what else is in the news? Well, we're going to do the theme of this whole video is going to be on free speech. And there was an interview that I encourage you to watch on YouTube between George Gammon and Robert Barnes. If you don't know who Robert Barnes is, he's probably one of the best lawyers or defense attorneys in the world. Man, I tell you what, I've never, the things that he can pull out, he's kind of like Colonel McGregor. Colonel McGregor can, hey, Colonel McGregor, what happened in 6 BC during the war between the Moziks and the Ziziks? I'm just, there's no war. I mean, I'm just saying. And Colonel McGregor would just go right off, oh yeah, well, during that war, this, that, and the other happened. And the reason that the Zenites lost was this, that, and the other. Well, Robert Barnes is about the same equivalent on the law. And he was debating about, they were talking about free speech and the lines there. So what Barnes was pointing out, and I just wanted to talk about this for just a minute, was that we have to censor people with a consensus, okay, a condemnation. And so, in theory, you would think that, the majority opinion should be the right opinion. So in other words, if you think a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and the majority of people feel that way, you can call out the people that are saying, no, that's not true. And of course, they got into masculinity versus femininity. And of course, that can go down any path, she's wearing masculine clothes. He's very feminine, so that whole debate is a whole different debate. So, but the problem there was, and Gavin was feeling the same way I was, the mass consensus back during the, he calls it the cerveza sickness. I love it when he calls it that. Back during 2020 was that because I was unvaccinated, people were calling for me to be put in a concentration camp and locked up. Okay, and also I was excommunicated, as I've told you in the past, from all friendships.
The problem is the attitude within the culture. We're assuming that that's always going to be rational. And it's not. I mean, let's look at the 2020, Robert. I think that there were a few people, a very, very small minority, that were standing up against the lockdowns, as an example, or the mandates. And so you could have said that, like, by me standing up against the mandates and the lockdowns, well, that is culturally inappropriate, and that people should pressure YouTube to kick me off of the platform. Or if I was working at Office Depot or something, to get me fired for my position on the mandates, or the medicines, we'll call them, the lockdowns, because that was culturally inappropriate. So how do you grapple with that?
That's where I think the key is the limitations of cause and the limitations of just this is what constitutes cause. You're in a position of influence, and like to your question about what kind of behavior, would it constitute incitement to violence legally? So saying, for example, it was justified if you're a university professor probably could constitute incitement to violence. So if it's incitement to violence, you're in a position of influence that you could help create that outcome. That's what I mean by a position of influence. Then it's cause to have your employment terminated. And this particular cause of a political permission slip on politicized violence is worth it to bring down the temperature across the board. Also, I think the part that a lot of people haven't looked at is I'm also looking at people who are really angry and want to do something. Well, I think we've got to give them a channel where they feel that they can have.
On which side, Robert, are you talking about? People who are angry on the right or the left?
People are angry on the right. In other words, that a lot of people on the right are like, hey, we've been dealing with this for a decade now. You walk out in a Trump rally and they throw eggs at you, like that woman in San Jose, California. They beat you up or assault you. They dealt with it in BLM riots and the summer peace riots of 2020. They dealt with it, as you point, during the COVID context. They dealt with the weaponization of the entire legal system by the Biden administration. I mean, the irony was the Biden administration was confessing we had a problem, that there's a small group of people that are being radicalized online towards politicized violence. It just wasn't on the right. It was on the left far more than it was on the right. It was like their warnings about their own corruption by saying, look at all these horrible things Donald Trump did. And they were just giving a confession, a biography of Hunter Biden's life story. So there's some aspect of that there. I share entirely the limitation libertarians want on this to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. I do think it's just unusual. Historically, politicized violence takes off when people in power say it's okay at some level. And so I want to discourage people in that position from saying it's okay. So to reduce the violence. And I want to give a channel for people that are very angry and upset, a non-violent channel for their political expression of anger at those people that help facilitate this in the first instance, without jeopardizing First or Second Amendment liberty. And you're absolutely right. It's very tricky. It's very treacherous. And the trade-offs are hardly anything to be easy. But I think they're worth it and unfortunately necessary because of the unusual. The Charlie Kirk murder was itself a turning point. His organization was called Turning Point. But it's going to be a turning point for good or bad for America. Either we're going to get back to recognizing we don't murder people because of their speech and beliefs in the country, or we're going to get into a civil war environment. And the latter terrifies me as much as anything.
Because I would not get the vaccine. And of course, being a Trump supporter at that time wasn't real popular. But that was minor compared. And also, because they saw, the consensus was that I was putting people in danger by not getting the jab. Okay, and I was all over the media. And so anybody that had that opinion, got the phone dropping off there, was, so you could see where the mass consensus was, in my opinion, wrong at that time. So that's just one example. Another example was, and that Barnes brought out, was back in about 1918, the Ku Klux Klan was very popular. So the mass consensus was that the Ku Klux Klan was a organization that was on the right side of the issue of segregation. And a lot of people felt that way. Until, I don't know if you remember the murder of those 3 black children in a church. It was kind of like the murder of Charlie Kirk, and that changed the mass consensus in a different direction. So can we use mass consensus to police speech? I don't think so.
Do you really think this will lead to a reduction as far as and again, we're focusing on putting pressure on businesses to fire people that said something that was inappropriate. Do you think that is actually going to reduce violence? And because here's where I'm going with that. Let's just assume that you have a position on genders, that there is only 2 genders. And let's say that the cancel culture, or the irate mob on the left gets you, Robert Barnes, fired, or they take away your license to practice law or something like that. Would that, after 1 month of you obviously being upset and angry, would you come to the conclusion that, hey, maybe I had the wrong position on these genders and maybe I should change my mind? Or would that make you even more pissed off? And you see where I'm going with this. If someone's insane or unhinged or brainwashed to begin with, I don't know that we're going to unbrainwash them by firing them and getting them fired and basically ganging up on them, I think there is a strong potential that we radicalize them even further. And this leads to even more violence because now they feel like the fascists are really out there. I'm backed up into a corner. And the only option I have is to fight back with violence just to save myself.
Well, I think two things there. I think there should be afforded where, in most cases, there's a reason why we have confession in various religious and cultural traditions. It's because there needs to be some path of reconciliation for those that have gone wayward so that they don't feel, as you point out, isolated and marginalized and intensify their anger against the system that can respond with violence. So and I agree with it, that concern is a definite legitimate concern. The way I look at it is, at least historically, when all of a sudden the culture, usually it's some cultural shock. In the 1920s, it was a Klansman getting arrested for sexual assault, but who was a highly prominent person. It's something like that usually when the culture says, oh, hold on, this is actually unacceptable, that you do see a radical reduction in the violence. So I am predicating it on, in the past, when there's been mass cultural rejection of politicized violence, we have seen a substantial decline in it. The second thing is, I want to give people who are very angry about this a non-violent alternative right now, because my greatest concern was that we would start getting into reciprocal violence immediately.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, don't respond with violence. Find those people, shun them, shame them in the local community if they're really particularly dangerous because of their position of influence and their ideas, but focus on non-violent mechanisms of dealing with the issue. Let law enforcement deal with certain aspects of funding it and organizing it and those kind of people that in fact violated criminal law. But that's the other reason why I think historically it has worked. I share your agreement. I share your skepticism or concern. This can easily get out of hand. And when Pam Bondi goes off and starts talking about hate speech exceptions and criminally locking people up, that's a very legitimate concern for people on the libertarian side to have, or free speech side to have. And that's why I've been trying to coordinate this in such a way to give people advice as to, here's a path that can work that doesn't jeopardize the liberties you care most about, or gives us at least the best chance of the best trade-off, which is what I'm looking at it from. And it's from the historical perspective that whatever it is, it's that political permission slip that's critical for these people to act out their sick fantasies. And for the most part, you don't need to send a message to everybody that's in that, right? You can send like 5,000, let's say 5,000 people get fired. That gets the message out more often than not. So that 90% of the people that did something stupid learn the lesson without having to suffer economic consequence for it. Realize, oh, you know what? This was too far. That's okay. Hold on a second. I got to rethink this. This has got to be a limit we all respect as part of our civil society. And I put it this way, I hope it works, because if it doesn't, I'm afraid the alternative is even worse.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I said in that first video I did when I was just in a state of shock, that you can see this leading to a civil war where it's like a Hatfield McCoy, or it's like something that we've seen in the Middle East for decades, where it's just both sides, right or wrong, thinks the other side is genocidal, and therefore the only option is to fight back with violence. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying, which is probably another reason why when I see people online, even if I agree with them, if it seems like this is stemming from an angry mob, I'm like, whoa. We got to pump the brakes on this one. We got to take a couple weeks off, take a deep breath, reconvene, and then let's rationally think of the best path forward, understanding that there's always going to be costs, there's always going to be benefits, and there's always going to be trade-offs. There are absolutely no solutions at all. I want to go back to the KKK stuff because I find that really interesting. Do you think that would have worked if the university system agreed with the KKK, and if we would have had social media like Reddit that also agreed with the KKK? Do you think that shunning approach would have worked? Because you see where I'm going with this. Like back then, they have no other outlet to tell them that what they're doing is right or that somebody wronged them, the only thing they can do is reflect internally and say, wait a minute, this is another human being. And if this happened to my kid, I would be horrified. If the guy had children, a wife, these innocent people, it gives them time to reflect. But if they go to the university the next day and the teachers are, celebrating this, and they go to Reddit and the teachers are celebrating whatever they did, lynching, let's say, back in the 1800s, do you think it would have had the same beneficial effect to actually reduce that violence?
Yes, I do. At least from what I saw from historically. And it was whenever there was any breach in the dam of public support for this, it would often just collapse. And it would collapse rapidly. I mean, like views in the South on race between 1963 and 1973 couldn't have shifted any more dramatically. Probably best exemplified by the man who stood at the schoolhouse door going in front of a black church begging for forgiveness and asking their support, George Corley Wallace, which is what happened by 1973. 10 years before, he was right in the schoolhouse door. And it was because of mass cultural social pressure. And usually it's from people within their local community. It's someone they respect that's a teacher or somebody else who either gets a consequence. Oh, wow, I can have a bad consequence for this belief. But mostly it's recreating that Amish shunning and shaming, that if it's culturally broadly enough, people get the message. And it's fascinating because I was curious, like, how do all these sociopaths suddenly get in line? Why do these sociopaths stop being violent, at least for politicized purposes? It's to get the message that there'll be all kinds of bad consequences and the society doesn't want them to do it locally. That, like, the people who went and bombed that Birmingham church and killed those 3-4 little girls that were there singing Sunday morning thought they would be celebrated in Alabama when they turned around and were condemned by even people within their own political ranks. That all of a sudden set the tide went back the other direction. And I agree with you. Charlie had thought about these issues all the time, that he was getting some wrongful criticism of, well, why didn't anybody care about when the Democratic legislators were killed? Actually, Charlie did. Charlie was talking all the way back in April. He says, we're developing a political assassination culture. But Charlie also said, I don't want to lose our First Amendment or Second Amendment rights at the expense of trying to deal with it. So Charlie was always, he took the free speech path every single time. He took the Second Amendment path every single, self-defense path every single time. And I respect that in him and being his friend. At the same time, I understand how this can get out of hand really, really fast. And at least the historical predicate that's worked, that is still consistent with liberty values, has been a cultural, social shaming of those bad behaviors of people in positions of influence. And the way I've tried to define it is, if it would be cause to terminate that person, then this cause of not encouraging a political permission slip is worth exercising that public shunning and shaming behavior in this very limited instance. But I agree with you. We should be very, very careful that we don't just let that. We've got to have strict standards, strict limits on this, or it gets out of hand very, very fast.
I'm still a free speech absolutist. And then Barnes was pointing out another thing that I found very interesting. Okay, so a janitor, he comes out, or she, and says, Charlie Kirk got what he deserved. Okay, now, should that janitor lose their job, or maybe posted it online. Let's say they posted it online. Charlie Kirk got what he deserved. Now, a janitor making that a statement probably only has on social media, let's just say, unless they've been working it for a while, maybe a couple followers or whatever. So who did he influence with that statement? Right? Nobody. And so, that free speech statement, it has no impact on society. That's the point. Okay? Now, if Nancy Pelosi comes out, or AOC, let's just say, and says, Charlie Kirk got what he deserved, and he's a right-wing agitator, and any right-wing agitator needs to go to jail. Okay, that's a person of influence. And that speech, through mass consensus, could be censored. In other words, a lot of people, might respond to AOC in social media or on TV and condemn that statement, okay, because she does have influence. And, calling people, Nancy Pelosi, calling Trump a Nazi, for example, that has influence over a lot of people, could have brought about the shot that almost killed Trump, that clipped his ear. Okay, because that has a lot of influence. Because what happens is people look up to people in prominent positions, whether it be in the media or in the government, for whatever reason, or a corporate executive, for example. So you can see the slippery slope that free speech has. And that's why I'm awful worried that the Trump administration is going to go crazy censoring left-wing speech now. And also it's a blowback. How many of you, like, I got censored off of everything. At one point I had 2 strikes on YouTube. The 3rd strike, they would have just taken my channel away. I had to be real careful after the 2nd strike, because I think it was something I said about masks. I won't say what. I don't know what the YouTube policies are these days. Masks are good. If you want to put 2 masks on, if you're a Democrat, put a freaking bra on top of your head and wear 6 masks, okay? That's my opinion. It's your right to do so. You go right ahead. And who knows what protection it might give you. I don't know, if you get enough masks on, that should give you pretty good protection. I'm just saying. YouTube. Okay, that's what I'm saying. All right, so we could see how back then, we were getting censored for saying that the virus came from a lab, and then, of course, we went to the other extreme. Oh, another little factoid for you. We come to find out the Biden administration was investigating 50 they considered right-wing organizations, using the FBI to see if they could get any dirt to shut them down or bankrupt them, one or the other. So the entire government was weaponized by the Biden administration to an extreme degree. And I'm a bit worried that Trump's going to do the same thing. And now Barnes and Gammon didn't talk about Antifa, but that's kind of the same thing. Trump has declared Antifa a terrorist organization. Well, what does that open up? That opens up the ability of the government to investigate Americans without due process. That's going on down a slippery slope. Now, are we worried about Antifa? Yes, most definitely. But we have laws in place to investigate them without declaring them a terrorist organization, which, takes away some of their, probably the need for a search warrant or things like that, to be able to bypass the Constitution to go after certain people that they deem members or affiliated with Antifa. So that's another slippery slope. So we're going to get into the reading here. Let me see if I can just get it up. While I'm hanging out, I'm trying to think of any other news that I got. Dagnabbit. Well, we'll get on it here in just one second.
Welcome back, and joining me now is Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator Paul, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, today is the memorial service for Charlie Kirk. I know you have called him a friend. And Senator, you, of course, have been impacted by political violence yourself. In 2017, you were on the baseball field when shots rang out, when Congressman Steve Scalise was shot. He did survive. But Senator, I wonder, what do you think the legacy of Charlie Kirk will be?
I went to many of Charlie Kirk's rallies. My wife spoke at his rallies. I spoke on campus with him. Events similar to the one where he died. The events earlier on weren't as big. They got bigger over time. But he was an incredible young man. I think articulate, thoughtful. And if you really see the people who came up to him that had a different viewpoint, he would hear them out. And that's different than a lot of the argumentation you see either on TV or on the internet where everybody's drowning people out. He actually would listen to people. So I think he'll be remembered for that, and also being remembered for a guy that was trying to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that, I think, should be applauded.
Well, thousands paying tribute to him today, Senator, so we appreciate that. I do want to talk about ABC's decision this week to suspend Jimmy Kimmel's late night show after, of course, he was criticized for comments he made in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and hours after the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, said this. Take a look.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. these companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Senator, do you believe that Brendan Carr's comments were appropriate?
Absolutely inappropriate. Brendan Carr's got no business weighing in on this. But people have to also realize that despicable comments, you have the right to say them, but you don't have the right to employment. Virtually everybody employed, probably including yourself, has a code of conduct in your contract that you have to adhere to. NFL players have it. Major League Baseball players have it. And if you don't adhere to that conduct, if you say things that are reprehensible or that glorify someone's death or make fun of it in some way, yeah, you can be fired. So the FCC should have nothing to do with it. But I do think that, a couple of the networks pulled out. Sinclair pulled out. They were disgusted by the comments. That's their right. You can be fired for not being popular also. I mean, this is television, for goodness sakes. You have to sell sponsorships. You have to sell commercials. And if you're losing money, you can be fired. But the government's got no business in it, and the FCC was wrong to weigh in, and I'll fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech. I will fight.
Well, you take me to my next question, Senator, because I do want to ask you, broadly speaking, about free speech. I want to play something that President Trump promised during his inaugural address, followed by comments that he made just this week. Take a look.
I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
When somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech. That's no longer, that's just cheating.
Senator, do you believe that President Trump is sending the message that he only supports free speech when it's speech that he agrees with?
Well, this is why it's kind of rich for Governor Shapiro also to come on and be outraged by censorship. Was he asleep for the 4 years of the Biden administration when they did have censorship? The FBI, Department of Homeland Security were sent to the offices of Twitter. They were sent to the offices of Facebook. Facebook was told to take down information concerning the origins of the COVID virus, or they were being threatened with remove their liability protection or being threatened with being broken up by antitrust. So we have had official censorship going on for many years now, and everybody on the left just looked the other way. They actually had an office of censorship. So I applaud Trump for bringing that down. Now, saying we're going after the FCC licenses is wrong and inconsistent with that. I applaud Trump for getting rid of the censorship office in our government, but I think people should discontinue this idea of policing hate speech or sending the FCC after networks. I'm absolutely opposed to that.
But, Senator, just to be very clear, I mean, President Trump said that he vowed to, quote, stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. I hear what you're saying, but just to focus on what you are seeing right now from the president himself, do you think he's doing that? Is he protecting free speech?
Well, actually, it has occurred all throughout government. The Department of Homeland Security is no longer sending officers to Twitter to talk to them about taking down.
But what about what President Trump is saying?
The FBI is no. Well, I can't control everything the president says, and I don't think that having the FCC weigh in on licenses is right. I will fight that. But I can tell you that throughout government, the censorship apparatus that Biden had put in place is gone. I actually have a bill to try to do that through legislation, but I can tell you throughout the Trump administration, they have stopped doing it. Now, it doesn't always match the words you're hearing now. I think people are raw, they're unhappy, they're angry. We're mourning the loss of Charlie Kirk, and we find it despicable what these people are saying. So some people think, well, let's resort to government. I'm not one of those people, but I also do think there are other ways that people can be let go, and Kimmel could be let go simply because of his contract, not making enough money or saying something that defies the code of conduct. So there's a lot of reasons he could be let go. It would have been much better if the FCC would have stayed out of it.
All right, Senator, a couple more questions to get to with you here. I want to ask you about something that occurred on Saturday. President Trump publicly pushed his Attorney General Pam Bondi to prosecute his political opponents. Let me read a couple of the people he mentioned. Former FBI Director James Comey, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California, New York Attorney General Letitia James. He wrote this on social media, quote, "We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times. times over nothing. Justice must be served now. Do you believe it's appropriate for the president to direct the attorney general to go after his political opponents, Senator?
I think lawfare in all forums is bad. What they did to Donald Trump by changing the statute of limitations, changing the law, adding up a bunch of misdemeanors, adding up a bunch of records violations and making them into felonies, approving hundreds of millions of dollars in fines when there was no agreed party, none of the banks complained. That was lawfare. But it's also wrong if Republicans do it too. We need to get politics out of the judicial system as much as we can, but we can't do it without acknowledging that the king of lawfare was Biden. And so, yeah, it's wrong if we do it, but it certainly was wrong when Biden and the Democrats were doing it throughout the country.
But, Senator, if it was wrong then, you're making the argument it was wrong then. Is it wrong now? I mean, do you explicitly disagree with President Trump's post?
I just said lawfare of all sorts is wrong, Republican or Democrat. It's wrong now. But you have to put it into context also and acknowledge that the king of all lawfare was Biden and the Democrats for 4 years. What they did to Donald Trump was an abomination. But yes, it is not right for the Trump administration to do the same thing.
Okay, and I think there would be a debate over that characterization, but I do want to move on because we're running out of time. I have to ask about the big topic that is consuming Capitol Hill right now. Of course, it's the possibility of a government shutdown. You were one of 2 Republicans who voted with Democrats opposing the government funding bill, Senator. Do you think the government is headed towards a shutdown?
I hope not, and I think it's disruptive to close the government down. The Republican plan would add $2 trillion to the deficit. The Democrat plan was going to add $3 trillion to the deficit. So this is my point. Both parties are terrible at addressing our deficit. We have a $37 trillion debt, $1 trillion in interest, and it's because both parties are terrible. So I'm not going to vote for the Republican plan or the Democrat plan. I think eventually they come together, but typically the compromise is to make things worse. The compromise through the years is the right gets more military spending, the left gets more welfare spending, and the deficit continues to explode. Our debt has been downgraded. Our AAA rating's been taken away.
Yeah.
There is unrest, and I do believe that we face serious problems as a country if we don't do something so simple as just start spending what comes in, balance our budget.
All right. Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for your perspective and joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
There he is. It's going to get dark on us before we get back. All right, I wanted to get this post out of the way. Maybe we'll make the rest when I get home in the car, because I want to get going on the trail. I can't push and talk at the same time, unfortunately. So this is Health Ranger. Are influencers influenced? On the subject of influencers in general, I hope people realize high-level influencers are constantly subjected to various outside influences themselves. Usually that comes in the form of money, like Tim Pool receiving strange amounts of sponsorship money from sources that turned out to be questionable. Other times it's in the form of threats, like the constant threats received by InfoWars hosts, including swatting, like what happened to Owen Schroyer. Where possible, influencers can also be blackmailed with compromising material, and they can be subjected to either actual honeypot traps or deep fakes that might be convincing to the public. Another vector is when employees or colleagues are offered money to turn on an influencer. Years ago, I was offered $50,000 to turn on Alex Jones. I refused, and I paid the price. I was told that if I refused, I would be deplatformed from major online platforms, and that's exactly what happened. Not only turning on Alex Jones cost me millions of dollars in medium-term revenue for my online store, but by the way, economic deplatforming is the very first weapon of those who try to silence you. Jones himself was offered tens of millions of dollars to turn against his own audience and promote globalist agendas. He also refused, but some of his former employees took money from corporate media to smear him with fabricated information. To think that Nick Fuentes isn't being subjected to all sorts of forces, offers, and potential compromising traps is to live in ignorance of how the world content influencers actually operates. What determines the real merit of a person is how well and for how long they can resist the threats, the money offers, and the blackmail attempts. And also to find out if they can handle fame and at times the wealth if they earn enough money without losing their way and becoming arrogant or disconnected. It's actually a small subset of influencers who can navigate all these things and still come out with their integrity and humanity intact. A couple of years ago, for example, I turned down $100,000 a month for a potential sponsor in the gold space. I didn't think their pricing was honest. So I said no. In my book, the jury is still out on Nick Fuentes in the long run, but I'm praying for his success in staying on the course that's true to pro-human values and true to conservative and libertarian values. Note that audiences of conservatives, influencers, tend to be very well informed and very sensitive to sudden changes in your posture on issues. That's why any person suddenly changes course in an instant is an instant red flag. Dagnabbit. One of the problems with not printing this out. Let's just continue. I'll put it up where. What followers expect is consistency grounded in moral principles. When influencers break that consistency, it's often a sign they have been influenced by some outside force and convinced to alter their alignment of their speech. If I, for example, were to come out and start promoting a big pharma weight loss drug, I would lose my entire base of followers because that would betray the very principles of natural health and nutrition that I've taught for 25 plus years. What wise influencers realize is that integrity is your only real currency, and you can lose it in an instant if you betray your followers on whatever topics of your focus. So that really hit home with me because, when I lost all my friends because of my stance on not getting vaccinated, and the unvaxxed was considered a threat to everyone around me. In fact, I was pretty much alone at that time. Unbelievable. And I remember that very vividly. Luckily, I've never been offered wealth or money or things of that nature. I've been tempted in that fashion. So I've been very lucky in that regard. So we'll continue the video at a later time. Peace out. Stay free.
That I know are a priority for both of us. So I heard you speak with Viva the other day, and you seemed to be very sympathetic to the view of maybe adopting cancel culture. And I hate to use that term, but is that your view? And if so, why do you think that is the best path forward? And let me define that. I think we should compartmentalize an employer having the right to fire anyone they choose. I am all in favor of that. I've been an employer, and I think that I don't care if someone looks at you the wrong way, you should be able to fire them. But I think there's a difference between that and collectively putting pressure on a business to fire that person, or else, that person that said something that you might not agree with, no matter how despicable it is. So I want to differentiate. So what I'm talking about now is collectively coming together as a group to put pressure on businesses to fire people that have said something, let's just say inappropriate for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think what you have is, so you have different issues. If the government is your employer, then you have free speech protections, but that doesn't necessarily extend as far as some people may think it does. Then you have the private employer context, and what you're really describing is both the legal and political appropriateness of economic boycotts, because that's effectively what people are suggesting is a form of economic boycott. Say, if you employer keep this person employed based on public statements that they have made, then I will not support your business and will oppose your business. Now, in the union context, you can take it a step further. Civil rights context, this goes all the way back to the Montgomery bus protest. What a lot of the civil rights movement was, people kind of forget, wasn't so much speeches and marches, it was economic boycotts. That's really what moved the needle in Birmingham, was they decided, well, we're not going to ride the buses anymore unless you integrate. And that's what led to that effort. And then there was multiple legal efforts to try to suppress that, to say that the boycott was illegal. for the most part, you can join a boycott. And then you have like the flip side of it right here in the United States in, say, the BDS context as to Israel, where you have an effort afoot to boycott Israel on the one hand. What's that legality? And then you have efforts by, in some cases, the federal government, some cases, state government agencies saying they're going to punish you and deny you federal contracts, deny you admission to college, deny you visa access if you are part of BDS. Now, this has got very...
What is BDS, Robert?
Boycott, divest, and sanction, which is the Palestinian movement against Israel, mirroring largely the broad BDS movement as to South Africa. That's their model, is what, for those that may not remember, in the 1980s, massive boycott movement of South Africa moved the needle there to help facilitate reconciliation in the end of apartheid.
Right.
There might have been other issues, too. South Africa was one of the most mismanaged governments in the entire world. And things, of course, haven't got exactly a lot brighter since the apartheid ended, sadly. So that's, from a legal perspective, I think it's when you have competing speech rights. So it's like my right is like what you're describing, employer right to fire versus an employee's right to a job. Where do you balance that out? An employee's right to speech, an employee right not to be fired for any reason that doesn't relate to the employment. I have long been a supporter of for-cause limitations in the employment context. Because otherwise what happens is we end up with all these, hodgepodge of laws. Okay, you can do this as an employer if it's you, but you can't do this if it's like race or it's religion or it's gender or it's, in some liberal states that's drastically expanded. In some cases that's political protection. In some cases it's not. So you've got such a wide I used to argue that there was an argument when I came from a sort of more labor populist side of the equation, that there was an argument for a for-cause limitation. But even in a for-cause environment, the statements that have been made in the Kirk context, I believe, constitute cause for an employer to fire. Because there's almost no scenario where and the reason why I am considered cause in part is the broader cultural issue. And it's kind of like El Salvador, right? So I see it like that I'll be as big a First Amendment free speech advocate as anybody anywhere. But I understand where El Salvador was, where basically the cartels ran the state. At what point isn't the first liberty the liberty to live, the liberty to physically be alive? Where do we draw that line? I'm for as little state as possible. But when we have a situation where here it's the political permission slip that bothers me. So to sort of take a step back, what is your
political permission slip?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to take it back a step, there are three main issues. Is that we are getting to a level of politicized violence in the United States that is the worst it's been since 1968.
Right. Yep.
So that's their concern. What is triggering that? I see it as a bifurcated situation. One is a coarsening of the political culture, particularly from the left, but not exclusively, but predominantly from the left, which says that words themselves are violence, speech themselves is violence, so that violence is a permissible reaction to disfavored speech. That I think at a certain point, constitutional liberty, the first and foremost constitutional liberty, this is the El Salvadoran president argument, is the liberty to be alive. And if something is happening in your society that puts that liberty at severe, substantial risk, then we have to assess how we handle other things in society in terms of employment, in terms of speech, in terms of other protection of other rights and other remedies. Like you look at El Salvador, they've decided to step back from full due process protections in order to lock up every gang member. And now it's led to a radical reduction of crime. He's the most popular leader in the world. The concern from a civil liberties perspective is where do you draw the limit? What justifies that in the first place? How do you make sure innocent people aren't entrapped in it? How to protect it? Same area of concern here. You want to make sure people get due process protection. But I think as a matter of general principle, there is no First Amendment protection federally. There can be state by state. California, for example, the Unruh Act. Generally, there isn't a right to your employment regardless of your speech. And if your speech puts a bad negative view on your employer, hurts your employer's competitiveness in the local industry, then your employer is fair game to terminate your employment.
But again, that's the legal component of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm probably an absolutist from a standpoint of, I think if you own a business, that's your property. Your employees aren't your property, but your business is. And so you can fire them for any reason you want. And I would...
Time to recognize that wokeism is perversion, ladies and gentlemen. It's sick. It's wrong. Our government is in the hands of parties addicted to money and psychiatric drugs. The few believers at the top hate our civilization and are determined to destroy it. What must happen is we must disengage from this war in Ukraine. I can tell you from personal experience, and I studied it in graduate school, no one in here understands Ukraine. No one understands Russia. Forget it. Nor should we involve ourselves in their affairs. It's not our business. We need to stay home. It is time to restore the rule of law. That's vital. It's breaking down everywhere. You know that. That always set us apart as an English-speaking country. Everyone knew they could come to the United States and do business. There were no bribes involved. There was no corruption. Well, there was always corruption, but it was manageable. We've got to crush the criminality. We have to return integrity to the electoral process. Right now, most of us have very little faith in it, and with good reason. And this is a struggle that will take years, but it's vital. And finally, we must protect the innocence of our children and halt the sexualization of our children. And I do not agree with the notion that the people running this town are invincible, invulnerable, or strong. I've dealt with them. Most of them remind me of people that we used to punch out at bars for entertainment. Or kids that we didn't like in school and beat the hell out of at recess. Don't be afraid of these people. Once there are enough of us, and there are growing numbers of us, we will prevail. Thank you.
People are not going to return, and you scale that over a course of 5 years, guys, that's your margins, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the restaurant business, right? The restaurant business is built on recurring customers over periods of time. It's very much on the returning customers. So for us, it's not dissimilar, right? We run these events. If 20,000 became 17,000, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, right? That's kind of eats away at the margins and the core of what we do. So as far as like sustaining the brand though, you want to try to be ahead of it, right? And this is where I think founders and entrepreneurs should never be disconnected from the lived experience of what you are trying to actually present forward. And so that means you guys should continually make sure you are eating the food that you are serving to make sure that it's still good.
It's the greatest way to do it.
I'm sure you teach your entrepreneurs and your managers all the time.
And I eat at all of my restaurants just to make sure.
How do I apply this to my life or to us? I make our event managers go as attendees to our own events for a couple hours. Go sit in the chair. Is the audio good? Is the acoustics good? Are they getting into the room quickly? Is it too hot? You know, like you have to, you have to go through that kind of lived experience. And we do surveys, we do feedback, but all that I think is a bunch of rubbish, honestly. Nothing gets close to the actual like tangible living through sitting in the booth at the restaurant. And then, I'll just repeat what I said. It is very tempting. And I go through this all the time as a founder, as an entrepreneur, when I receive negative feedback to do two things, to either take it personally or to dismiss it. It took time for me to be like, look, great opportunity to be better. That's not natural because you get defensive. Like, what do you mean you didn't like the Bloody Mary, right? You know, but okay, let me think about this. Is there a way we do it? And then you can use prudence to be able to navigate that.
Yeah, that's actually a very powerful one. That is, you got to go through probably some exercises to get there. But
it takes time. It takes mentorship. Yeah. And that's, again, going from good to great.
Yeah, it is.
Good to great, you look at feedback as an opportunity to upgrade and to turbocharge, not just to either get bitter or to dismiss and act as if nothing is wrong.
That's right. Even though the statement, I got to be honest, feedback is a gift. I know it is, but when someone says that to me, I want to punch him out.
Yeah, but not all feedback is. You have to use prudence and wisdom to know, like, okay, this is just a person that literally complains for a living, right? Yeah. They want a free meal, they want a free airline ticket, but there's also, you could tell somebody that writes like a very thoughtful letter, you know, I was ignored a couple times, this and that, like, okay, you know, this is something that we need to take care of for sure.
So last few questions here. Appreciate the time. Lessons from leading employees. I mean, you have over 1,000 Gen Zs. We employ. We employ a lot of Gen Zs.
I could teach a master class on that.
Okay, well, tell us a 2-minute master class on just teaching and leading those Gen Zers.
If in the ideal world, you have a clear set of articulated values for your company that is no more than 1 page, maybe 2 pages. And in the onboarding process of onboarding a Gen Zer, you not just recite it, you get buy-in as to what those values are. We show up on time around here. We tell the truth. We don't blame people for our problems, right? We always try to find a way to make things better, right? You do not bring your personal life into the workplace, right? Ba, 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 ba. While you are onboarding them, you don't just do it. You say, hey, do you have any problem with this? Tell me your feedback. You involve them in that value process. You get them to co-sign it, not just in some procedural way, but to have them have real buy-in. Why does that matter? You have now established a standard of conduct that when they break it, like, hey guys, remember in that onboarding 3 months ago, you said you're not going to bring your personal life into business? Well, you just did that. So let's talk about why you did that. You need to live up to the standard. This is probably always been true in corporate life. It is so enormously important for Gen Z because they have a tendency to try to make that there's no like work-life separation. And they also will cry injustice sometimes for something that you think is a normal operating corporate business practice that they need to be reminded to in clear detail. So you can have like the 10 commandments of savory brands or whatever it is, right? And that process, then there's no wiggle room or excuse. And what it is, it needs to be publicly displayed, right? It needs to be everywhere when you come into work, when you come out of work. So there's no mystery. And again, it can't be 100. It shouldn't be 50. Honestly, you could capture a lot in 10, like tell the truth, don't complain, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And again, if there's a problem, be like, I don't think you're a good fit here anymore because you're not living up to the standard that you already agreed to.
Yeah, that's great.
Right? And then you have to live by it. And here is the key. Your managers and your leaders must also live by those rules. You will have a schism in your organization if the managers are living by a separate code. Now, they can have different privileges, but they cannot have different principles.
I actually agree with that.
Right? Privileges being is, okay, they can come a little later, they can have a company car, but they can't lie.
No.
Right? They can't do one thing. And like, so privileges and principles are two different things. So for us, it's worked very, very well.
It's phenomenal.